everybody, I'm Sophia, and I'm going to be talking about how to judge a debate round and what to do at the very end in terms of giving some feedback. And so the most important thing about being a judge is to be impartial. Your job is to listen equally to what both sides have to say and to make a decision based off of what the act tells you and what the neg tells you, regardless of your own personal opinions about the debate topic. And so a great way to kind of weigh the debate round is by using Mr. T. And so remember, keep in mind that the affirmative presents a plan about what we want to change. And the negative talks about how they want to defend the status quo and how doing the plan isn't a good idea. So Mr. T is a great tool to use. And just as a review, it stands for magnitude, which is how big the impact affects people. The risk, which is how likely the impact is to happen. We can also call this probability. And then lastly, we have time frame. So that's how soon you think the impact will occur. And you can a lot of times weigh this with both of the impacts on the affirmative and then the impact of the negative, which is typically the disadvantage. And you can ask yourself if the affirmative is defending nuclear, has a nuclear war impact, and the neg has a global warming impact. Well, you can ask yourself, maybe, well, which one is more likely to happen, or which one is going to happen sooner? And that might lead you into the side that you should vote for. But again, always let the affirmative and the negative tell you which side that you should try and vote for. A lot of times they'll give you a Mr. T, especially in the rebuttals, and that's definitely something to take note of. So here we just kind of have an example of a good RFD and then an RFD that you could add a little bit more to. So the good RFD here, you can see as an example, it's specific to the debate round. And when the kids go back and look at your RFD, they can kind of remember, oh, 2AR did a really good job in their speech and that helped the judge. So maybe what the 2AR did in that debate round, we should try and do something similar again. So the subpar RFD that we have here is very general, and though it's good in explaining about being definitive that they voted affirmative, you always just want to try and add a little bit more detail so that the kids understand why you voted a certain way. So this is just kind of an example of what you might write in a debate ballot. And this page is really important. It's important to keep in mind that you always want to give a lot of positive feedback for the students. That way they know they did good and that they can keep on doing it. And it's also good to give some constructive criticism. So I like to think of it as like a ratio of 1 to 1. So if I give one positive feedback, I also want to give them one constructive thing that we can work on for next time. And so here in the examples, you can see like 1AC, I wrote good mix of speed and clarity, but you would also want to write more. I just didn't want to fill up this page too much, but you always want to make sure that you're giving positive and negative feedback. And then also make sure that the feedback you give focuses on 2 elements. So the first element you want to focus on is the content. So what they're talking about in the actual debate round. So be specific. Maybe they didn't explain the link as well in the rebuttal. Maybe they didn't split the neg block as well as they could have. So focus on those things. And then the second thing you also want to focus on in terms of feedback is to talk about speaking skills. So maybe they need to be a little bit more clear, or maybe they could make more eye contact with you, but focus on those 2 elements of the types of feedback that you should give. And this will all be written on a debate ballot, and the students will be able to get it at the end of the debate round so they can see all the advice that you're writing down. So the other way that we give feedback as a judge is by giving verbal feedback. And this happens at the very end of the debate round, after the 2ARs finish speaking. So sometimes it's really tempting to want to give feedback, especially if a student does an awesome speech during the round, but try and hold it to the very, very end. And so just keep in mind that when you're giving verbal feedback, that you don't need to cover everything that's written on the ballot, because the students will get a copy of it at the end of the debate tournament. So you just want to focus on the most important things. So maybe you could follow the rule of 3 and say 3 things to each person in the debate round. Because the students don't always want to listen to like a long lecture style feedback, and sometimes there's not even enough time, especially when we have in-person debate tournaments. We're always focused on getting to the next round, but definitely don't rush yourselves. Just think about covering what's most important. And another really important thing when giving verbal feedback is to make sure that you give everybody equal feedback. So don't just focus on maybe one student if they didn't give as good of a rebuttal that didn't help you write your ballot. Try and give everybody equal feedback, that way everyone can equally learn from the debate round. And so it's awesome that you're wanting to volunteer as a judge. And these are just a couple of tips to really, really step out of the box and be the best debate judge that you can be. I've already talked about sort of the first two, just the types of comments to include on your ballot and for your verbal feedback. But another thing that's super important is to open it up to questions. As a judge, it's your job to make it an exciting and open learning environment for these students. And I always tell my students that right after the debate round is always the best time to learn, because sometimes your coaches don't always get to see you in the debate round, but these judges have so much good advice to give to you. And it's great for these students to debate in front of different judges and they can get different opinions. So always open it up to questions. I promise the debaters will always have questions to ask you, which is awesome. And so these are just a couple tips for times, especially if you are judging a debate tournament. You know how time pressed it can be sometimes. And even in the round, flowing and keeping track of what each side is saying while also writing your ballot can definitely be a challenge. But my biggest advice to you is to write your ballot as you go through each speech. So you can either write comments on your ballot while the 1AR is giving their speech, or right after the 1AR is done, you can write comments on the 1AR. But I highly suggest to not go through the entire debate round and then fill out your ballot at the very end, because you might forget some really important things that would be good to include on your ballot. And so at the very end, even if you're kind of rushed to submit your ballot, but you still want to give feedback, something I learned that's a great tip to do is you can always just open up another Word document or take a picture of your ballot on your phone. Just copy and paste it either way so you can keep your ballot, so you can submit it so that the tab room is able to process your ballot in time. And then also, if you copy and paste it or have a picture, you're able to refer back to that and still give students comments while already having your ballot submitted. Because it's always great if you have time to give the students as much feedback as you possibly can. And they'll definitely have questions for you. So just don't rush, take your time. Just keep in mind that you're the judge, so it's controlled at your pace. And so ultimately, as a judge, I talked about this a little bit earlier, that it's the judge's role to create an environment that's open for learning. And the fact that these kids are here at the debate tournament on a Saturday morning, they could be doing anything else, even like sleeping in. It's great that they're here wanting to debate and wanting to learn. And so as a judge, it's a great opportunity for you to share your opinions on the debate round, give them positive and constructive feedback, and make the debate experience just fun for them overall.